Hillary Clinton wasted not a second leveraging the attacks in Las Vegas. This morning she tweeted, quote, "The crowd fled at the sound of gunshots. Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer, which the NRA wants to make easier to get." Clinton then added, without a trace of irony, "Our grief is not enough. We must put politics aside, stand up to the NRA, and work together to try to stop this from happening again." Tammy Bruce is a radio show host, and she joins us tonight. Tammy, what was your response to Hillary Clinton's tweet?
Well, it was shocking, and it was also ghoulish. She put out that tweet at about 7:15 in the morning Eastern Time. The police in Las Vegas were still removing bodies as of 2 p.m. Pacific Time. We also know that not everyone had died right up until we still had more deaths. This is a woman without any details, without any elements of information, moving immediately into a political framework and immediately going into the pet issue. Now, look, Americans know that, as you've discussed your entire show here, that we have a problem, that we're going to be dealing with what caused this and the issue of the firearms. But when you go to the element of the guns, what it does is it sucks all the air out of the room, Tucker, to deal with the underlying major issue, which is the human condition that drives this issue. And just as one example, Mayo Clinic says 70% of people in America are on a prescription drug. Opioids and antidepressants being the majority of them. Over 50% of Americans are on at least 2 prescription drugs. The things that we never discuss, which is the nature of what would push someone over a ledge like this in the modern age, never is addressed because we all get moved in by politicians to this issue. And you know, we're going to find out what made this an automatic weapon. We're going to address that. But it immediately divides. It immediately removes the compassion within the nature of what we should be doing today. And I think Americans, this is exactly what Americans are tired of.
So flesh that out a little bit. And I should just state the obvious, which is I'm hardly a doctor, and I have no evidence that prescription drug use has anything to do with this. But I've long suspected that there probably are effects. If you have a huge percentage of the country on mind-altering drugs, why wouldn't their behavior change?
Well, at least we need to begin to ask. And because we don't ask that question. In addition to, as you've brought up in your program, the issue of media, the nature of the horrible, bloody carnage that we've been watching for years since September 11th, 2001, if we're becoming inured in a certain way. But this is the human condition. This is what we have to deal with. But then there's also the hypocrisy of Washington and of someone like Mrs. Clinton, who in that Tennessee church shooting, where one woman was murdered, 7 injured, and the massacre only stopped because of heroic usher. She has said, I found this hard to believe, but it's true, nothing about that particular attack. And if the issue really is about guns, we don't see a consistency in this. And in the meantime, we struggle as a society to want to find the solutions as we elevate the heroes that we see in the midst of something like this. And this is also, again, what Americans are seeing about the condition of our society, how politicians are not necessarily saying and doing the right thing, and how we're tired of being divided in this regard.
I would like to get to the deeper questions. I think it's a really smart point. Tammy, thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Congressman Art Swalwell is a Democrat representing Northern California, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Of course, thanks for me.
So Hillary Clinton's tweet was, "The crowd fled at the sound of gunshots. Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer." Why would a silencer have made the deaths the higher number of deaths?
Well, first, Tucker, you know, my heart aches and my hands pray for the victims.
Amen.
With deep gratitude for the first responders. If they ran into a building not knowing where he was shooting, I think her point is Congress is considering not doing more to prevent mass shootings, but actually the only legislation around firearms is to allow silencers. And I think a lot of the concert goers...
What does that have to do with this, though? She said, imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer. Do you think she thinks a silencer would make a rifle silent? Does she think that? Because if she thinks that, maybe she shouldn't be weighing in on it.
Social media has given us thousands of perspectives on this shooting, and you look at most of them running to the sound of gunshots. And so if a silencer was allowed, if people could buy it, maybe they wouldn't have heard the gunshots and more people would have died.
But see, I guess that's what bothers me, when policymakers weigh in on things about which they know nothing. So a silencer would not silence a 223 on automatic fire. It might suppress it some, but it's loud as hell. You have to wear earplugs, even with a suppressor on the end.
And with the concert going on,
so most people might not know that, but if you're going to weigh in on it, and we're all sort of obligated to take your opinion seriously, maybe you should know what you're talking about, but she doesn't. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's emblematic of this entire debate. Nobody pushing for gun control can name a single piece of gun control legislation that would have prevented this or any other shooting, unless I'm mistaken, unless you've got one.
Well, it's still early. It hasn't even been 24 hours.
I totally agree. Then why are all these Democrats jumping up and down about the national tragedy of the NRA and we need more gun control? What gun control exactly would have ended this?
Well, I think when you watch so many people who are helpless and running, you think that our lawmakers under the Capitol Dome we're not helpless. Before the trigger is squeezed, you're actually able to do something. So whether it's universal background checks, whether it's ammunition restrictions, whether it's making sure we don't have silencers, or, of course, making sure that a weapon of war is only in the hand of a warrior.
Stop! You're doing exactly what you just conceded is false and unhelpful. You're throwing so-called silencers into it when we both know that that would have had no effect at all. So, look, you're a lawmaker. Hillary Clinton tried to be the president of the United States, came pretty close. Don't people like you and her have an obligation to know what you're talking about before you try and change our laws?
I know what I'm talking about, and I look at the fear that people have, and I think they expect from us to at least have a dialogue. You know, let's have a task force of Republicans and Democrats.
But it shouldn't be a fact-based dialogue, not a...
Of course.
Because this isn't a dialogue. This is a soliloquy designed to make the rest of us angry and fearful. A dialogue is when I say, here's what I believe and here's why. But that's not what she's engaging in. That's not what Senator Ben Cardin is like. We need to ban automatic weapons. They're already banned. They've been banned since the Great Depression. Like, these people have no idea what they're talking about. Why don't they be quiet until they learn something?
I think a lot of us are tired of just being quiet. And I think there are a lot of good Republican ideas around mental health. And the last guest mentioned prescription drugs. Let's talk about all of that. But let's do more than just be silent.
Okay, I'm totally for that. I'm for a real conversation. Something strange is going on in America. I'm 48. This was not a feature of my childhood. This is a new thing, and something is causing it. But the prescription from the left is always the same. Ban certain guns, ban certain bullets, ban certain magazines, silencers. And yet they don't feel an obligation to explain how that would solve the problem because they know it wouldn't, because that's not their agenda.
So
and that's what scares me.
Tucker, tonight, Congressman John Lewis, Mike Thompson, John Larson are asking Speaker Ryan, let's just have a bipartisan task force. Put everything on the table. Let's look at the facts of this shooting and others, but let's do something and show that we're not helpless. We can actually address this issue, and hopefully in a bipartisan way.
Why would I trust someone who points to silencers within hours of this shooting as the cause or an exacerbating factor? That's like moronic.
Because silencers would make more shootings like this actually easier to accomplish. And Congress right now...
But how exactly does that happen? I mean, so you're sticking with that talking point? Because that's not true.
Have
you ever fired a weapon with a suppressor on it?
Yeah.
What kind?
So, AR-15.
With a suppressor on it.
I was a prosecutor, Tucker, so we'd go out and look at the weapons that were taken off the streets.
So you fired an AR-15, shoots 5.56.
It doesn't silence completely. It suppresses the sound, which shot spotters won't pick up. It makes it harder for victims to hear it. And so it's just another tool to disguise.
No, but are you being serious? So you've actually fired the rifle with a suppressor on it, and you're telling me that you didn't have to wear earplugs when you did that?
It suppresses the sound. But Tucker, the point
Wait,
here...
did you have to wear earplugs when you did it?
You should always wear earplugs if you're shooting for safety.
Because you're going to go deaf otherwise, because that's how loud... I just shot one the other day. It's super loud. So if you've done that, you can't look at me straight in the face and say, they would be undetectable. Are you kidding?
But with a concert blaring like it would be a lot less noisy. But Tucker, the point here is, let's just convene. Let's have a conversation.
Okay, but we have to have a rational conversation. We can't have people pointing to silencers or flash suppressors and saying that's the problem.
Republicans imminently will vote to allow silencers. That will make it easier.
They protect people's hearing. It would have nothing to do with this shooting. That's insane, and you know it. You fired the rifle yourself. That's not the answer. Can we be real?
No, dialogue is the answer.
Right, dialogue. That's what we're doing. Congressman, thank you for coming on, as always.
My pleasure.